Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the T.O.A Podcast. I am your host, Andromel. And, can I just say, I was going to say welcome, but I already did that the second time.
Yes, you did.
I don't know, maybe I just want to welcome people twice, new subscribers, all that good stuff.
I
have no idea if
you could be welcoming me onto the podcast,
Why would I want to do that? I live with you.
It's for the viewers' benefit.
Welcome back to the podcast. Say hi to the people.
I don't know if I want to now.
Oh, good.
Your heart wasn't in it.
Oh, well, sorry, my heart's, it used up all its energy, I think, earlier today. But, in recent times, especially what you just built yesterday and you just building in general lately, my brain wandered. It ventured off into the thoughts of, interesting part usage, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, there's always the case, have we said, I think it was before, not using standard limbs, so we we build stuff, right? But with the reverse, using bigger, less normal parts in creations. Because I would say your most recent mock, at least Bionicle mock, pretty much did that.
It did very much. The whole purpose of the mock was to utilize a Galador piece I had recently acquired 2 spares of, and it's basically using the exact same place and method as the set. It is not using the big honking Galador piece there.
That piece being the blue frill, fur around to Paul's neck.
Mane, yes.
It's a furry neck mane scarf thingy, which is interesting. And when it comes down to interesting part usage, I would say that my Bionicles, arguably are a little less creative than, System. Because when I think about System, I have at least a couple different mocks.
That I think parts are predetermined to be, a chess piece.
Pretty much in Bionicle, you have to go the other way, where you have to become, maybe less part creative, but more just, how can I make this out of a bunch of little stuff?
Yes.
But, I have a couple System things that both use Duplo parts. One of which being the Duplo trained cattle guard. I had 2 blue ones of those, so I used them on engines around the engines of a classic spaceship.
Blue cattle guard.
Yeah.
Where do blue come
Duplo. Blue cattle guard.
Oh, Duplo, okay.
Yeah, I ended up having 2 of those and used them on a classic spaceship. I have an M-Tron ship that used a Duplo piece, and I had a chrome Duplo shovel for a Rock Raider vehicle. Which, by the way, that Rock Raider vehicle also was shown on the Rose Brick. My one and only time. The Rebel Shovel. Love the name, by the way. Which also did end up using the Exalix launcher canister garage thingies. Yep. Which,
though,
in containers.
Implementation of his was definitely really clever. I don't even know how he got it to stay on top of his ship.
Wedged into place.
And it worked.
I think mine looked better, but that's...
Yours was more appropriate to the theme. X just honestly looked...
His looked
more well incorporated.
Like I said, let's be honest, we built them pretty much at the same time. If I wanted to do it that way...
I don't even know who inspired who with that.
I have no idea.
I want to say Ek did it, and then you're like, I want to do that too. But I can see you doing it, and
I think we might have saw something on Flickr or something that used... Exalix parts, and we're like,
I can also see
we want to do containers.
I can also see you being like, I want to do this, and Ekison were like, well, I'm gonna one up you.
It's a very realistic possibility. Both ways, I would say, are just it's so long ago now. That's going on 5 years now for those mocks that I couldn't say.
I feel like I have a very proud part usage for a Bionicle creation, but with so many creations to sift through in my mind, I can't really hit it as of the moment.
Yeah. I do generally always find it interesting when one can use a piece on a Bionicle that isn't a way that you would expect to use a piece. Okay, this is a kind of a weird example, but Ek had ended up using the T.O.A head on someone's foot. Now, before people say that Traga had them for feet, I mean a slightly larger mock where it was Metru-sized mock where that was built into the foot, and actually looked really good. And it's just one of those cases where it's I never would have definitely gone that route, and definitely inspired me with my most recent mock to try incorporating them into feet. Mine are at the heels of it.
I have noticed that when I do have them available, T.O.A heads without eye stalks are going to be nice, partially because they are flat, and like a lot of areas on Bionicle, you want kind of that somewhat triangular shape to fit in areas.
They work really good for crotches, honestly.
I think it's just Bionicles don't lend themselves to squared shapes, so you want something that has a bit more of a wedge, because you're usually narrowing an area down.
Well, it's the same thing with like regular feet that you have, like let's say Metro feet. You know, they have that flat surface.
Yep.
But they flare. I mean, it's a foot, right? No, there's a reason why these feet are so much better than, arguably a better feet for add-ons to like the adding on to a body rather than T.O.A. T.O.A feet are better for being in the middle of the build, right? You know, being pieces are attached to it, not it attached to pieces.
I would say I am very proud of a mock I made that does use Spinax's head as the chest belly of a larger figure. It really does kind of give that slim but kind of natural tone look to it.
Ah, yes. Yes, that mock actually just has generally some pretty decent part usage. But you know, like it's definitely one of those things where it's like you look online and see how people use parts and go,
I would have do.
Man, that's clever. And then I almost never do. Like, also, I think one of the most famous parts usage when it comes down to, I'd say, the construction figure character building community is the using that Ben 10 Roctus's like shoulder thing, neck thing, that's inverted as a cowboy hat. Like that's a brilliant idea. I've used it on cool people. Not my design, but I love the idea. I love the idea and like the implementation. And it's those sort of like, you know, part usage I look at and go like, I don't think we've ever, on most cases, really gone that creative with using parts in like ways that people just go, oh, that's cool. Because, I mean, let's be honest, when it comes down to Barnacle, for the most part, we build a frame and then you add on, right?
I think it also comes down that we don't tend to deviate much from a standard build. We don't make wild creatures or
not
usually.
We don't build to impress.
We tend to build characters, so we tend to have a lot of humanoids.
Also, for those who listen to the podcast, you guys start having a tally about how many times we mentioned that we build characters, not mocs, because I feel like that gets brought up a lot. And I'm okay with that. At this point, you guys can start having a bingo list at this point.
No, it's
I think well, that means that have to be done several times in a podcast. A bingo list is more so, okay, how many times are they going to hit these points in this particular thing? I think it's bingo. But, actually, I was just looking at the shelf over there, and one parts uses I thought was actually pretty good that you did, where this is not so much like armor, but you use the Savage Planet 3.0 Rocco? Rocco? Is that the... Rocca Gold Lion heads as lower legs. Not so much just not necessarily the armor, but actually as a lower leg.
It's pretty much the whole lower leg. It's the armor because it's gold, but...
Basically, you can't just grab the piece out and plop it off and swap it with something else.
That piece has a very annoying back to the mask,
there's coverage on the back.
I had to literally build around it, and surprisingly, it didn't look that bad when completed. Because sometimes we do that, you're going to have like extra stuff jutting out from the back of the leg you don't want, or it's going to leave an annoying gap. But this was actually worked out very well. The only downside is that the amount that he can bend his knees is pretty minimal.
Yeah, but I was like, look, the fact that he managed to use those heads as the lower legs is pretty good. Like, I did something similar with Inikahuki's mask, where you have basically a Roxy leg, and you poke through the lower ball through the mouth of the Huki mask. Yeah. I have it on my T.O.A, on my T.O.A Magnetism with my T.O.A Call. And that right there, it's like...
Oh, and Nikuhuki. I was picturing Marihuki, and I'm like...
That's arguably one of the easiest masks and most difficult masks to use. Because on one hand...
It's flat.
On the other hand, it's flat.
Well, sometimes the best pieces are ones that kind of have a bit more... I'm going to call it the wraparound effect. So you don't... Because a Metru foot is great design-wise, but you put that on a leg, and you're left with this vacant space behind it.
You have to use
and
other parts to fill it up.
Sometimes that's what you want, but if you get like a T.O.A foot, you can insert it over other pieces.
Parts that have basically, I would say a
three-dimensional usage.
Yeah, they don't just have a flat basically surface. Like all the connect points on the sides of
I would say smaller pieces like the standard Throwbot foot. That is a good piece to be flat because it's small. It's usually meant to go over top.
Or just a filler piece in general.
And it's small enough that it being flat isn't annoying. Whereas an Arashki foot is a great profile, but you put that on, then you have to fill up the sides of something, and it usually does not flow nicely. It's definitely the reason I'm finding that I don't use Rakshi or really large pieces much anymore, outside maybe of the actual torso.
For me, if I use large feet or something, generally I find it's usually on shoulders and the back. Feet are great back coverage, in my opinion. Like they're one of the best pieces, just to slap on the back and you have.
They're
coverage.
big. They've got a bit of.
I don't like using them on legs much anymore, but like upper arms, like the shoulder area, depending if I don't have like a pauldron design, the foot's the way to go.
I do find if I'm going to put a foot anywhere other than a foot, it'll be torso, and probably, like the lower leg is probably the next best. I usually try to shoot for the upper arm, but it never works out.
The upper... Oh, right, yeah. Well, arms and feet are always just a kind of a mismatch. And then you just look at another shelf of yours, I see another interesting part usage. That's Galoo's mask as a spear tip.
Yes, that one actually has two Galoo's man. It has it for the waist/back, and it's at the end of the spear.
Using actually just like masks and heads in, I would say body's always interesting. Like also we all know the standard of use a pair mask as shoulder armor, right?
Yes,
that's a tried and true method.
I would say I become notorious for that at this point.
Not only were you the first one to start doing it, but
I'm the one who keeps doing it.
You keep doing it. I find I occasionally will do it, and then I leave it for bad. I don't think I've done it in a while.
I would say normally I tend to be like, I will use a new idea concept a lot when I find that it works. And then it sort of pitters. It sort of pitters out. And then it may be like, oh yeah, here's something I used to do. Wonder I should do it again. Or, oh yeah, I found better methods. But that one's a continuous. When I have the mask to spare, I tend to go that way because shoulder armor in itself is a piece that I either never have enough of, or I've learned to use other ways, so I don't have enough of.
I mean, the mask is, as I was saying, tried and true. It looks good usually. The downside is if you're using obviously Gen 2001, 2002 mask, you have a little bit of a connection issue usually. But for the most part, it's not too bad.
The bigger thing is normal shoulder armors. I find I have a way harder time working with because of either that three-dimensionalness or due to
they stick out too much.
They stick out too much, or just trying to get the flow with the rest of the mock. Whereas when I find masks, they're bigger, and they have more room, so you can kind of have a more janky system.
Their connection's deeper into the curve than
the standard T.O.A armor looks great on mock.
Well, if you think about standard T.O.A armor, that's almost a too long axle that's jetting out from the base of it. Well, an old style mask is like half an axle.
And when you're trying to build mocks that don't look insanely broad of the shoulder, it does make things a little challenging.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those cases. But there's definitely some times where I do get impressed when we do occasionally use masks in other locations that look good, not just that we're putting them there for the sake of putting them there.
Off the top of my head, the first one that comes to mind is my the Miru Nuva on basically my self-mock's chest. It flows with that build so well.
Well, you have that Anna-Green Kakama Nuva, I think, on a self-mock chest, don't you?
Yep.
Which, I don't know which one I like better.
I would say the Kakama Nuva works better just for being less in the way, because the Miru Nuva has a central spire. Yeah. But I think the Miru Nuva actually flows better.
No, I would have to agree. Interesting on both green mocks that have it. For me, it's like outside of... I mean, I'm not going to count boob masks in this, because I think we've talked about that before when it came down to... But I do have masks I know use as someone's feet, or at least as the caps of the feet with Zakurok. He's got basically a pair of Great Ruse as his feet, which I'm not 100% sold on. They work pretty good, but there's always that lingering thing where it's like, does this look good? Does it look weird? It looks fine.
I think if they didn't have, I think if it was a mask that had a natural more like
a point rather than two.
So like Jaco's visor.
I just think we're having two big toes, you know.
I know I have a hooky orange kakama on a guy's chest, and the mask is upside down.
I just funny, both you and Ek both actually have hooky orange kakamas used on a black guy, because Ek I know's got a couple used on the side of someone's waist.
Right.
I have not used any.
I mean, I would say the prime example of how I can use masks would be the creation I made that was black and gold mask gold. So the only gold on there is gold mask. She has a gold mask for a mask. She's got a couple Pakaris for her chest. She's got a couple Kakamas for her crotch section, one on each side. She's got Pakaris on her thighs. And some cow news for kind of the knees. And none of them really feel wholly out of place. They flow fairly well. It's mostly just some are more obvious masks than others.
I mean, part of that might also be the fact that we're very used to seeing masks on builds now. But also, as you said, you know, the crotch, the chest, the shoulders, the mask, the knees are pretty much like, I would say, the best locations to have them.
Yes.
I would say because like, you could have masks in like armpit areas, but you have to have a very specific mask and a very specific way to pull it off. Like, I could see it being done. I mean, I haven't used masks much to that degree.
I don't think I've used any mask on the side of a person's torso.
I think I have one person who has a 2x2 mask on the waist, like as basically waist armor. I think. I haven't dug out that box in a while, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a high probability with that. Karana, on the other hand, I haven't really used at all, like, outside of Peel and Peel's heads. It's like, certain Bionicle pieces are just really hard to use in interesting ways, especially if you're not making just for display. I want to be able to pick up my mock, look around, hold them, repose them, without parts just popping off.
I like a mock that you can fiddle with well enough that it's not just going to like every movement a piece.
As an adult, I want to be able to play with my action figure toys.
Don't get me wrong, I can appreciate a good looker mock, but I do feel like a Bionicle should be at least reasonably posable and reasonably fiddleable.
I also do think one thing that's very different between online mocks and like super like fragile looking custom like, you know, characters and such compared to what we build is, I wonder how many of those crazy neat things with the really made up heads look good from the backside. Because some of these heads are using like croissants as like eyebrows and such, and like how well do some of those look from the backside? I want to know. Because I only ever see one picture of them and it's just a frontal view, and I'm like, what does that look from the back? And I'm notoriously bad at not doing back coverage for a long time. Ek was always one who I think over time really wanted to get his a 360 rotation to look good. You know, the front, back,
definitely don't ever give the back as much attention as the rest of my. I am willing to let my back be a little like. It's not.
I feel like this.
I'm willing to go. It's serviceable.
For the back, the upper back of the body, I think should look decent if you can. The lower waist, if you can, sure. After that, legs, then the lower arm, then the upper arms, and then the lower legs are like one of the last things I care about.
Very seldomly do I ever need to worry about arms because they're not usually bulky enough. It's usually if there's like a lift arm that's attaching the armor to the arm and in the socket that has to be there. That yes, the back is going to look a little janky, but
yeah, no, it's the three having everything fully, you know, covered. And I will say that about the sorry, a couple of hiccups. Just had to drink some tea. Tea and cucumbers. Let me tell you, that's an interesting combination for hiccups. Like when I'm doing back coverage, I have found that seems to be one of those times that I do end up using. They're usually on the mocs that have the most interesting parts usage. Now, obviously, like back coverage isn't going to be one of those things that's like crazy creative or anything. But I like one of my first people who had coverage on the back of their lower leg was myself, Mock on Vermel, which I use Throwbot visors on the back of the leg. A bit of an illegal because I had to break up levers to get them to stay on.
And even those aren't really attached, more just probably wedged or hanging
in. They're wedged in, which, I mean, I've done something similar by just swapping out a couple pieces to have a ball, put a Hero Factory armor, and the coverage is pretty much the same. It's a little less smooth, but it's pretty much the same.
It is really annoying when there's a really sharp-looking piece and there's just no feasible way to attach it. I'm looking at you, KK2 visors.
KK2 visors, Throwbot visors. Hey, wait a minute.
Hey, wait a minute.
I mean, Throwbot visors, you can at least fudge it because it has a hole, not a nub. Actually,
KK2 is basically
speaking of
wedge.
KK2 visors, that actually makes you think of I used the Vladik visor in the chest of Iraq's one time.
This is true. The thing Vladik's visor has is just got the right size of eye hole that you can put a
stick.
I used a clip, a stick
the robot
clip,
hand clip,
the robot hand clip, through it that I was able to attach it to a specific headpiece that it stays on, it's in place, and it doesn't jiggle too much.
I'd use the same piece, but I know another piece that works just as good. It's like about the same length, but instead of a clip, it's got like a ball, like a mixel ball, really short, because it wouldn't have the clip. I mean, colors are less variable, but
depending where you put it.
As long as you have something, basically, as long as you have a stick that has like a nub at the end.
A long enough stick with a nub.
I mean, let's be honest, there's very few sticks that are going to be shorter than that.
Yeah. There's the 1x1 round tile with the pin.
Well, yeah, that we don't count. We don't talk about that.
But the thing is, that one is serviceable, but like I was able to use it on a head. But you can't really do that with the others, partially because Vladik's has a T visor, and it's a narrow enough gap that you can wedge it in there without it sliding around.
Yeah. So, I guess, like, has there ever been any, like even as, like, historically, like, old mocs, system mocs, any part usage that you remember doing, or you can think of, like, just by scanning the room, that you went, you know what? That was a clever part usage. I'm really glad I did
Venom's pecs. He uses 4 standard T.O.A armor, shoulder armor. Well, not standard, I guess they're green. But because underneath he has the Mari Kongu or Fantoka Pohatu chest piece, which allowed me to put 2 of them at an extreme angle. So they're not technically attached, they're just wedged in at an angle. And the other 2 attached as it normally would attach, pin, axe, all that. And they hold those in, and it gave such an organic pec look to a Bionicle. And this was the first Titan I'd ever attempted, which...
Well, it's pretty much the first Titan that any of us had actually, I would say, genuinely tried. Because before that, the only times we did were basically based on Toakeda.
It was the first
or we recolored, like, Brutaka and Axon.
which were seldom and only came in, like, big mass bright take-aparts. This was an actual, these are just parts, extra parts we've acquired.
You had to basically steal all the green from everyone.
All the green I could after making my T.O.A teams. And other than his legs, his build has not really changed. I've updated, bulked up a little, but he has stood the test of time.
Yeah, and that's kind of thing I like about looking at older mocs sometimes for us is, because some of our older mocs, just for the sole fact that we didn't have as many pieces, we were sometimes just forced to use different parts in
different techniques.
And honestly, one of my favorite, I would say, parts usage that neither of us did was for from Ek, where he basically gone a blue and white Visorak, and they build character. Also, Visorak don't really have any heads if you want to build
kind of lack a very distinct body.
So the head is just a Bork limb with a socket hanging down from it, with another socket attached with a couple eyes attached to it facing backwards. So it's just a face using a socket and a couple Bork eyes. But for whatever reason, it looks way better than... It's so part minimalistic.
And its torso and its whole body was 2 standard butts with a standard upper limb holding it together. And that gave it such a much more unique silhouette because it didn't have the broad shoulders you
I would say one of
with
the
most
few
other
times that's like that the socket has been used for, because let's be honest, sockets are pretty much used for one of two things. One, for articulation points, which is it's a socket, or filler. Because sometimes a socket just works really good as filler. And outside of
it falls down to that slight triangular and small category that it's just got the right shape that it fits in places.
And like in this particular case, it was very much used for the head, and it's become iconic for that made-up species of ours. So I'm just like, I don't know, I really like it, it's just nice and cool. So, yeah. Like, I know I've had other good part usages that I just can't think of. I mean, I've used nap in a Bionicle too. Like, my Variki model does use a couple snap pieces in his biceps, right above basically his elbow. Just as filler, because I need something to fill in there. And the snap connector piece that has like the 4 nubs on all sides. I don't even know what to call it. It's a snap purple piece. It's the only purple snap piece. Look it up. Which I'm like, okay, I've had a Bionicle use Nap. You have a Bionicle that uses Galador. We've had Bionicles that use Ben 10, Throwbots, and Robobar.
I have a Bionicle that even uses the whole body of a large KK2 figure. It's not the most seamless build, but I actually managed to get the legs stiff, which in itself I consider a win.
It weirdly enough doesn't look that bad.
It doesn't look terrible. I don't know if I'd say it's great.
It looks like a character you would see on a BioTube
I think it comes down to the problem that the big hunkin' body part is very obvious smooth in the system, and you get all these Bionicle parts around it, and it's kind of a textural clash.
Ooh. Also, I was just thinking about, using I keep saying think about using parts. This is the whole thing's about. I was looking over here. Okay, this may not be technically a sound like a crazy part usage, but I used a disc launcher. Okay, cool, right?
Right.
Interesting. I used it in his chest. Alright.
I think it's more of a
And this thing is, it's not so much using the flow of the body, it's still sticking out as a disc launcher, but then you reminded me that I should use the Nestle Paraka promotional type of disc launcher, which worked great for this because his character is Keat Orange and purple, and that little disc launcher comes in Keat Orange.
And the regular disc launcher does not.
So not only and it's a little bit shorter, so it matches color better, and just has one like stud shorter, so it's a little bit more compact.
Yes.
So it's kind of nice. I'm like, what I've been wanting to do is get actually more of those Nestle promotional weapons, because they come in like sand blue. At least one of them does.
They only come in 3 colors:
silver, sand blue, and
Keat Orange.
Ooh, Keat Orange.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Do you know the Nestle promotional, like, the same thing as that, but, like...
Okay.
There's another one that's, like, a little, like... Almost looks like a hockey stick, honestly.
Okay, so I thought you were talking that disc launcher specifically.
Still, other codes of that disc launcher sound pretty cool, but no, the other weapon that the good guys have, there's a sand blue one, for sure, because I have it.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, sand blue's a color that doesn't have much. So that specifically... Actually, what I want to do is actually use where this disc launcher came from was the AVAC figure, quote on big giant quote, because it's basically a head with like a scaffolding of a neck and legs that have a bunch of pinholes.
I know it's a stick figure lacking arms. That is what it is.
Because the arms are basically the disc. You take out the disc launcher, and if you build around the head, you can make this little beanie head thing with a body around it that I actually really want to try, which I forgot that I wanted to do that. So thank you for bringing. Not really you bring it up, but thank you for bringing it up. I'm gonna credit you.
I will take that credit.
You can have the credit or run with it. But anyways, folks, we're pretty much at that 30-minute mark, so I'm going to cut it short here, which is fine, I think that was a good little chat. Thanks you all for those who made it this far. And, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I'd much appreciate it. We're going to keep on rolling to that 200 mark. Maybe someday I'll take that new out of the dirt. Who knows? Maybe Gal's going to meet her fate with the water. I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm thinking like 250 or 500, 250 subscribers. I'm probably going to throw Gally into a lake or something like that. But until then, thanks for all listening, and I have been your host, Andromel. This has been the T.O.A Podcast, and we're retiring from the night.